So we welcome you for our session today, and we expect this to be a very interactive session. We have decided to have the session on dealing with disciplinary actions, grievances, terminations, and dismissals at the workplace or the place of work, or for technical people, they call it the world of work. So what I expect from you today is you will be asking questions, and if you want to be on the studio, our producer will be able to add you or share with you the link on your inbox so that you can come to the studio and ask your question live. So you can actually ask the question live. Just let us know on the social media platforms that you are asking the question live, and we'll be able to know how to go about it. The other thing that I also want to say is that I want to welcome each and every person from wherever you are. Due to COVID, most of us have not been able to do a lot of what we used to do, and there's a lot of sufficient disruptions. But as a result, we also have learned a lot. As the president of the nation today said, we have very many challenges, but within the challenge also lies an opportunity. So part of the challenges is that people have really had a lot of stress at their workplace, and some have a lot of loss of the jobs. Others literally are looking at options because the stress levels at workplace have gone high. But that is for the people who are working, the employees. But on the other hand, also the people who are setting up their businesses, they have employees, they have challenges because they don't know how to manage the workers, and particularly when it comes to disciplinary issues, grievances, termination, and dismissals. And therefore, this session is open for the stakeholders to ensure that we have a fair conversation. And this conversation will be very helpful so that you just know how to deal with it. We usually do this as a consultancy, and we usually actually charge, but we have agreed that it's important for us to share information. Knowledge is supposed to be shared. So I would like us to share the information. So thank you so much, Fidelia Mwangangi. I can see you already connected. And Nelson Mary, I can also see you here, and I see you inviting others. Please encourage everybody to invite somebody who will enjoy this, because it's a moment that you have to do with, so that you understand how to handle yourself at workplace. So I want to respond to your questions live, but I will start from a place so that at least we are able to move along together. That there are different ways of handling yourself at workplace, but part of that is that at workplace, there will be a moment when you will be distressed, a time when you will be challenged, a time when you'll not be in terms either with the immediate boss or with your juniors or with the employer in general. So you might be aggrieved, you might feeling that they're doing things to you that you don't deserve it done that way. Alternatively, if you are the employer, you should expect that your employees at some point will not be happy with how they are being handled, how their cases are being handled, how their commitment is being treated. That will mean that they will either start crying to you that they need fairness to be practiced at the workplace, or they will need to report either their seniors or somebody in the office whom they think is doing things that has aggrieved them, that has made them feel aggrieved. Some of these things will be resolve them so that you have a harmony at the workplace. So reporting issues does not necessarily mean that people are in bad blood, but it simply means that they are not happy with what is happening. And therefore, that is what we call grievance. So a grievance is a happening, an occurrence, or an issue that is not happening as expected by the aggrieved. And the aggrieved in this case usually is an employee in most of the context we'll have, but there are times that the aggrieved can be the employer. Now, if the employees they are aggrieved, most of the time it will be handled as a grievance. And if the employer is aggrieved, most of the time it will be taken as a disciplinary issue, so that it will be considered an issue that requires a disciplinary action. Now, some of these can also lead for you to lose your job or for loss of job to the employees. Now, there are various ways in which jobs are lost. And we have a few people whom I can say that are terminated. They're given letter referred to as letter of termination. So that letter of termination therefore defines that their disengagement was initiated by the employer and the employer terminated that relationship. So that is different from if the employer still can initiate it, but then they didn't even take you through processes that were expected because what you did was considered very gross. It was considered very serious. It was considered something that does not require too much time to be entertained in the workplace. So it qualified to be what we refer to as gross. So if it's gross, then you will be dismissed. And if you are dismissed, we have also what we refer to as summary dismissal. You are dismissed without warning, without hearing, without. So you you are exited from employment and relationship of employment without much process that is supposed to be taking place having taken place. That's the other thing that I want you to take note of. The other thing that you should also be aware of is what we will refer to as redundancy. Now, in this COVID season, there have been very many people who the employer did not have business. As a result, the employer chose that they should be taken home. So they were declared redundant. Now, what is being declared redundant? Being declared redundant does not mean that you have done anything wrong. You have not performed poorly. You have not had a problem with your conduct or behavior. But what you used to do either is over. So your assignment is no longer existing. So the employer tells you what I brought you to do is over. So you have to go. So the employer tells you that. Or you are many. You are supposed to be working. Let's say you are doing a job and you are supposed to be 10 of you. But the volume of work can only be done by 2. So it has reduced, the volume of work has reduced so much that we don't need 8 people. So the employer decides to send 8 people home and disengage. And if they do that, that will be, with that as a reason, then that will be called redundancy. Also, the employer can decide to come up with a new structure of the organization, what we call organizational restructuring. Now, when they restructure, one thing that you will discover is that some jobs will be created, others will be merged, but also some other jobs will be abolished, will be thrown away, will disappear. Now, those that are newly created will require a new set of skills. And I've heard many employees talk about this because you find that you are employed, and in your employment, one of the things that is happening is in this specific form of employment, you find that the employer is hiring people, but is also sending others away. So people have a problem asking, but why are they sending us away when they're still hiring? Now, if it was genuinely done, now the process should be that the new set of skills will be required. So those who have the new set of skills will be considered for the new hiring. Some of them might be in the organization and others might not be in the organization. So you find that there are people who will be retained if they're not in the organization, but given new roles, or those who are outside and have this set being brought in. But then those ones who the restructuring has made their job to fall off or to be reduced to the number that now they can't be part of the people who are going to work will be sent home. Now, if you are declared redundant, one thing that will be very clear about redundancy is that once you have been declared redundant, you are supposed to be paid something called severance pay. Now, that is a legal obligation of the employer that they should pay this severance pay to everybody who is going home on redundancy account. And I think I will be taking more time on this redundancy because there have been several media houses that have sent people home, and I have gotten questions in the recent past. We have also had several banks and financial institutions that have done the same. We have had supermarkets, we have had hotels, and we have had airlines, and literally the entire economy, every sector has been affected. So I want to get your questions so that we're able to respond to them at this point. But as I speak, I want to say that when you're declared redundant, and I want to be very clear on 2 categories, which I have gotten so many questions that actually necessitated in this session today. One was the banking sector, the financial sector, and particularly banking sector in Kenya. Now, one thing that should be clear is that this redundancy is well defined in the Employment Act of 2007 in the Kenyan laws. However, we have other laws that also can enhance what is there. So, for example, for people who are in the banking sector, the Employment Act says that your severance pay is supposed to be at least 15 days for every complete year of service. What this means is that in every year you have worked, you're supposed to be paid half of your month's salary. So if your salary was 100,000 per month, 15 days is the same as 15 out of 30, because a standard month is taken to be 30 days. So we say 15 out of 30 of your salary, which or monthly salary 100,000. That gives you 50,000. Now that is multiplied by the number of years you have worked. So you have worked for 7 years, we now say 50 times 7. That's what the Employment Act puts it. But if you're working in the financial sector, there are several other laws, and particularly the collective bargaining agreement, which sets that in the industry, that is, it sets it at 1 times. So, and in the Employment Act, you should not be disadvantaged if you are a member or not a member of the union, or a member or not a member covered by the collective bargaining agreement. So in section 40, I think so, should be in section 40 that talks about, I can confirm that in a short while, but when you're talking of redundancy, just give me a minute. On section 40 of the Employment Act of 2007, it handles the issue of redundancy, and it talks of termination on account of redundancy. And it gives several grounds. For example, it says that an employer shall not terminate a contract of service on account of redundancy unless the employer complies with specific conditions that are outlined there. And those conditions are many, they are around 7. Now, the part G of that, 40G, talks of the employer has, where they have, employer has to pay an employee declared redundant severance pay at the rate of not less than 15 days per 15 days of pay for each completed years of service. So that is very key. But most employers have decided to be making it that every time people are being declared redundant, that is the pay. Now, for people who are working in the banks, and I know a few banks that have just sent people home recently, and others are still sending, that should not be the case, because, for example, the collective bargaining agreement, which covers the members of the union, puts it at 1 times. That means your full salary. So if you are to go home and you have worked for 7 years, instead of being paid, and you are earning 100,000, instead of being paid 50 times 7, which is the 50 you got it from 15 days, you're supposed to be paid 30 days, which is full salary of the month, and that is 100,000 times 7. I hope we are clear. Now, the other part is you also discover that there has been precedents in the same industry. Some banks, and they have set in, industry precedents, and all these banks are members of Kenya Bankers Association. So they actually have a collective position in that regard, that you can have a fallback as an employee. So for the banks, you discover that we have, how do you call it? We have 1.5 times for every complete year of service that is supposed to be paid currently, because several banks have set that precedence. I know at least 2 or 3 that have done that. So every employee actually has the right from that precedence in the industry, when you're declared redundant, to be paid 1.5. And if you are paid less than that, you have grounds in law to actually go to court, collectively or individually. But the best will be if you do it collectively. I think I've mentioned that. Any details I will want to respond to if somebody wants to ask a specific question on that. But for the media, again, people are going with 15 days of severance pay for every complete year of service. Now, again, on the same account of collective bargaining, I think I've seen a situation where the collective bargaining talks of 30 days in the industry. So the media industry should actually pay a minimum, and that people can argue about it. But that exists in the collective bargaining. So that means that people should be paid at least that amount, not the 15 days. Now, where am I getting that from? In Part D of Section 40, or rather Section 40 of the Employment Act, Part D, D for David, it says where there is in existence a collective agreement between an employer and a trade union setting out terminal benefits payable upon redundancy, the employer has not placed the employee at a disadvantage for being or not being a member of a trade union. So in this case, from media, actually, I think there's what we call media council, which we also have editors guild, and these two play a key role in consolidating the power of employers within the industry of the media in Kenya. So what therefore that means that consolidated, these members have a position they make before they take action, and we have members of union in this specific industry in some of these shops, and therefore using the industry trend and industry best practice and industry precedents is that you should not be disadvantaged. That means you should not be paid 15 days. That's what I'm saying. You should actually be paid not less than 30 days. That means full salary for every complete year of service, for all the years you have worked. Now, there are a few occasions that can be done pro rata. Pro rata means even if you have not completed the years, if a year you worked for 8 months, we can say 8/12 and say how much is that. But most of the time, you find that employers are practicing that on account of the years you only completed. The ones you did complete, they don't calculate that. I may not go into that in detail, but at least I think I've made some sense on that one. So what else do we need to talk about in that regard? Now, the issue of termination you can also be terminated based on the normal procedure being followed. And there are reasons why you should be terminated. The law defines two of them in employment again. And I think that should be in section 41 and thereabout, where you can be terminated on the grounds of misconduct, your behavior, or you can terminate an employee on grounds of misconduct or their behavior being not within the standards that have been set or that have brought some level of disrepute. Of course, this is most of the time subjective, but it should be glaringly clear for conduct to constitute misconduct. In the event that there is an issue of conduct, then we expect that this employee should be taken through a normal process of hearing, so that they should not be dismissed or be terminated without being heard. They have a right to be heard, and it's a right for everybody in this country. So what we are saying, therefore, is that process will have to take you through what we're now calling disciplinary process. Now, in the disciplinary process, we expect most of the companies to have the disciplinary procedure and disciplinary. We should have disciplinary procedure. We also have disciplinary policy. And in some situations, we can also have the addendums. Addendums might be documents that provide for exceptions. When do we expect to have exceptions? When we have exceptions, who will give go ahead? That exceptions cannot have been covered in our normal day-to-day operations. For example, nobody saw COVID coming. So if COVID came and we want to act, and that action is due to COVID, and we're not seeing COVID-19 coming, so we will need authorization, and therefore a document called addendum will be very necessary to define how such exceptions should be provided for and by who, up to what extent. So in disciplinary actions, we are interested in the disciplinary policy. So organizations are encouraged to have disciplinary policies, which will be defining what is entailed in the process. But then, how the process should be carried out should be in the disciplinary procedure. So with maturity, organizations should have both the process, the disciplinary procedure, and the disciplinary policy, so that we know which is defined in the disciplinary policy, and we know what is also defined in disciplinary procedure, which gives us how we should do it. Now, the other issue is this termination in law. It's supposed to be through warnings. If you are found culpable, they should not just terminate you. You should go through a session where you are fairly heard, and that hearing is supposed to determine the extent of their allegation. Now, if you are found culpable, how much of this? So we can either end up giving you what we call disciplinary sanctions. Now, in these disciplinary sanctions, we have a variety of them. The severest being summary dismissal or dismissal rather. But then the most lenient is just a caution. So you're given a caution, or we have a verbal warning if it is something more severe than what a caution can take care of. But even the verbal warning should be in writing. So the document will refer to it as verbal warning, but it will be in writing. Now, if it goes beyond verbal warning, you can be given the first warning. Some people call it first written warning, but it's called first warning. And then after first warning, if it persists within this, because we have time frame within which you should not have persisted. So if it persists, then you're given the final warning. Usually, some people call it second warning, but warnings are just first and final, and they're all written warnings. You don't need to call them first written warning. Just say first warning or first warning later. So the employer is supposed to provide that, and the employee is supposed to agree. But if you don't agree, you're supposed to appeal. So each of the warnings is supposed to give you room for appeal, and most people don't appeal. By the way, most people don't appeal. Now, if you don't appeal, what this means is that you are likely, you have accepted what that letter has said. So you can never challenge it in future and say that they gave me this, I just decided to ignore. No, you appeal. Your appeal is considered in disagreement with the content, and therefore the appeal must have grounds for the appeal. So on such grounds, we are supposed to agree on a few things. That one, if you don't appeal, you have agreed with the terms. So never refer to that letter again if you find that another letter followed it in a short while. But if you don't agree, then you have to appeal. And I'm talking about Kenyan space because that's what I understand most. You appeal, but that appeal specifically follows one major thing. What are the grounds? What are your reasons for that appeal? And they must be stated clearly. Remember, when you are forwarding them to whoever is supposed to get them, they can accept the appeal or reject the appeal. So whether they accept or reject should be based on the grounds that you give. If the grounds are something that requires a hearing, then you should be given. But for the employers, that appeal should not be heard by the same individuals who had the initial one. So there must be a new group of the appeal bench or appeal members, team members, or the appeal hearing team panelists who should now hear that session. Now, what that will do is that it will assist. Yeah, it will assist in fairness so that they don't repeat the same mistakes. If they didn't see it the first time, or it was the first time, they're likely to be even this time. So the best is just allow them to ensure that we have a new team for the sake of fairness and also procedure. Even if you go to court, your appeal cannot be heard in the same court; it will be heard in a higher court. So what that therefore also entails is that the new team of appeal hearing panelists, if possible, should be more senior people than the previous team that had the first case. Now, the important thing to note is that minutes should be well taken. They should be true and fair copy of what has proceeded in that hearing session. They should be given to the accused, who should also go through them and make changes. Once changes are agreeable, then the document should be signed. And once the signing has been done, then the next thing you should do is now take the action, the sanction, the disciplinary sanction. That is whether you are warning, or if you're not doing anything, what you say, we didn't find this person culpable, and therefore there will be no action taken, or any other recommendation that you provide. Yeah. So it's again not necessary that if you had appeal hearing, or you had a hearing, people must be culpable or must be warned or given a verbal caution or verbal warning or caution or such. Yeah, but the last one is dismissal. Now, this usually is under gross misconduct. Now, I've explained all about conduct, but this process can also be repeated on performance. So if the performance is gross incompetence, then again it can lead to summary dismissal. But if it is just the normal incompetencies, then that one can be handled through disciplinary sessions. However, the difference between disciplinary sessions focusing on performance compared to those focusing on conduct is that on performance, you must also subject the person through another process called PIP, Performance Improvement Plan. You must come up with a plan that helps the person to improve in what they're doing, first by identifying what they didn't do well. And I mean identify what is it that they did not do well. So don't just wake up and say you didn't perform. What exactly did they not perform in? So then come up with parameters. Then agree that within a specific frequency, this is what we expect to see. Now, if that person requires training or coaching, it is now the employer's obligation to ensure that that person finds the necessary training so that they can improve in that performance. Because if they didn't perform well, what exactly caused it? So you must also do some cause what the analysis of what caused this specific scenario. And I think here is where most employers have never gotten it right, because they rarely follow the procedure or the process. And when things go to court, it becomes very thick. Yet what they are saying is true, but they have not gotten it right. And therefore, most cases in this space go with what we call unfair termination, unlawful termination, and procedural termination, such things. Not necessarily that what you are saying they did not do, but did you follow the procedure? Were you fair in the process you followed? Yeah, was it lawful in the process you used to terminate the relationship? And I think that's what needs to be taken into account. So I think that is good enough for that. Now, for grievance, let's take note that grievances are raised by employees more often. Disciplinary actions are raised by the employer more often. But these things affect us at the workplace. Now, for those of you who want to read further, I want you to just look into the Employment Act. It has a good guidance. It has a good guidance on the issues to do with the disciplinary actions, grievances. And when you raise a disciplinary action, you must be the one to prove what you are alleging as the employer. So disciplinary action, you don't tell somebody to allege them, they're supposed to defend what is been alleged, but you're supposed to actually prove. So the burden of proof is in the hands of the one alleging the offense. Yeah. So I think that is it. And I expected more questions from each of you. So if somebody had a question to bring it, I don't want to get so much further beyond this point, so that we're able to just know how you people wanted it done. But the most important is I want us to know that we are in a season where people are quitting jobs, people are crying to actually work. Somebody works for, they're supposed to work for 8 hours, they work for 14 hours, and then they complain that the employer is bad. Stick to working hours. If you go more than 2 hours over and above what you do and you do it daily, then there's a problem. There is a big problem. You are not a good worker by working 14 hours when you're supposed to be working 8 hours. You are not good at. In fact, a good employer should actually send you away. Yeah. So you need a life, and that job will end, and you start crying that the employer does not even recognize that you've been put all into that employment. No. It's not done that way. It's not how much time you put into the work. It's how much work you put into the time. Please take consideration of that. Some people actually don't work. They spend 9 hours in the office. They do work less than 1 hour or 1.5 hours. But they were in that office for 9 hours. Yeah, and I spend the 9 hours here. People need to be very, very diligent. What are you exactly doing? How much time can it be done? Don't use employers' time to do your own things and then now complain. But once you have done your work well, prescribed, and most of the time you can go an extra mile, because if you use that time well, there's more work you put in place. Once that is done, I can assure you that things will go well. So thank you. Those who are online, I don't know, producer, is there anybody with anything that they're saying online that you want to put on the screen? Whether it's on Facebook or YouTube or on Twitter? Oh, thank you, Evangelist. I can see you. Thank you. So your producer has given me this one. Says, what about in a case where the contract has the catchy phrase, may work extended hours more than the time indicated? Okay, I understand the question, Evangelist. Now, that phrase is not necessarily catchy. It is true that you are not going to be given a prescription when you go to work. So what that will mean is sometimes you'll work actually less hours because you finished earlier. But other times work will be, the volume will be there. So you work. If it's provided for in terms of overtime, then when you work and you post on overtime, please ask for the overtime on time. Don't ask for it 3 years down the line. But where you are extending 4 hours every day for 5 or 6 days a week for 10 months a year, there's a problem. That simply means there's more work than there is workers. So if you're doing the right things, you are supposed to ensure that you can quantify that a person has a capacity to do this amount of work. Now, this amount of work has been done in the last 3 months, which means in the last 3 months, we have done work which was supposed to have been done by 5 people. Yet we were 3 people. So this is supposed to be used to tell the management that we need more people to come on board. So if management are not prepared to hire the 2 people, they should at least hire 1. Now that gets sometimes very tough because people don't know how to quantify what they do. You need to come up with what you call cycle time. If you are a teacher, for example, teachers have lessons and lessons have time frame. And then we have how many lessons you can teach in a week. So there's a maximum number of lessons you can teach in a week. So if you find that you are teaching 45 lessons in a week, first of all, we know it's not possible. I once taught 13 lessons in a week when I was teaching. It was societal. But that is within what a teacher can do. Yeah? It's within what a teacher can do. So if you extend the working hours, extend them reasonably so that you don't get fatigued, extend that you start getting sick. Because sometimes you'll extend for the 4 hours, which is actually half a day. If you're supposed to be working 8 hours and you're working 4 hours, you're working 1.5 hours, 1.5 days every day. So for every 2 days, you work 3 days. So that's where the issue is. And if you're 2 of you, if that team has 2 people, each of them working 4 hours extended, that simply means that each one of you is doing, the 2 of you combined are doing work every day worth what to be done by 3 people. So you need an extra personnel. And that is when you use that volume and value of work, you use that to facilitate the management to let them know they actually need an extra hand, and this is the basis. And if that does not happen, extra working time, it is not in discipline to do your job within your time frame. If you have raised the issue over time and it has not been sorted, and over time it will not go beyond 6 months, it has not been sorted, then the lack of seriousness of the employer will simply spill over. And that spill over will either break your back because you sit too much, and we have seen so many people who will never go back to work anywhere else, not just where they were employed, because they no longer have a back. Yeah, they have a package that is permanent because they sat for long and they did it for 6, 7 years or 8. Now, or generally, you will not be in a position to have a social life. If you are not married, you may never even have time to get married. If you're married, you may have a time to be divorced or be separated with your people or never connect with your children. And you equally need that family life. You equally need that time just go and laugh with your children, with your members of the family. So I think I've responded to that. The phrase is good, Evangelist Pondo, but the challenge is if it's overdone, it brings a problem. I hope I've responded. Let me know your response. But if you want to also ask a question verbally, you can let us know in this. Our producer will be able to give you a link to join us in the studio, and you ask the question verbally and directly. Anything else that somebody has put on online that you need maybe to project? Producer, you can project anything that somebody has maybe put there that we need to see. Okay. So look at this. I'm reading this question loudly. I am a head of a school. The school is privately owned school. I have an employee who works as he wants. He comes at his own time and leaves at his own pleasure. He doesn't obey any policies and is totally unapologetic. You take them through all the 7 disciplinary steps with all warnings, cautions, disciplinary committee meeting minutes, etc. You have, let me just get it. You have all of them filed. All his arrogant responses are on file. Okay. I'm trying to digest that. So you suspend them for 15 days, which is the second last step to dismissal. I'm not able to see the whole thing, but let me try to imagine. Let me try to imagine this, that this specific employee is not following what is being told. You don't need to actually put them through all the steps, because if this employee, let's say, is a cook who reports late, simply is set the school on fire. Yeah, the learners will set the school on fire. So that is gross misconduct, if especially done repeatedly more than 3 times in a row and without sufficient reasoning behind it. So if it's a teacher, then how are they going to recover the lost hours, the lost time, the lost lessons? That is gross. You actually supposed to do this. You're supposed to give the warning and tell them that the warning is supposed to have this number of time to last. So if the warning is supposed to last for 6 months or 12 months, should not go beyond 12 months, and fairly should be within 6 months. So what that simply means is that employee, once they make another mistake of similar nature, that means a repeat of the similar thing they were warned, then that warrants them either to get a second warning if they were holding a first warning, or be terminated if they were holding a second warning. So you don't need to entertain them beyond. Suspension is meant to just take actions like we want to do some investigations. I'm being honest. I know employees like being pampered, but you are supposed to be strictly following that so that you listen to the issue. If the issue is not adding up, these steps that you have raised here are so many. The things you need to do is just if everything is on file, there have been procedures well followed, and within a specific time, because warnings are within a specific time frame. So within that time frame, if the offense is repeated, then for sure that requires a more severe sanction. So if it was first warning, they require second warning. If it was a second warning, they require termination. And that's what I'm saying. Yeah, and of course, if it was procedural like this, to give them a clause to ensure that they have a chance to actually appeal if they have grounds to do so within a time frame. Appeal will be given 14 days, 21 days, 10 days. Favorably, that's the best time frame within that range. Yeah, is there any comment online that we need to see? Any comment or a question? Yeah, producer has shared the link there, just in case somebody wanted to ask the question verbally. Okay, now I get you. Now, if that is the case, then you have finished your part. Now I get that very clearly. With that in mind, now I get that clear. You do your part. If the proprietor is okay with the nature of work they do, at least you have the records. And I think to me that is okay. Now, this happens a lot in family-owned, individual-owned organizations that don't follow up on adherence to standards. So if that is the case, I think to me that's fine. If the owner is family standing with them, finish all the processes. So that the only trigger you have is that I have finished everything. So since you don't want them to go home, they will not go home. Yeah, but also let them know, let the owner know the consequence of this to other staff members, so that after this has happened, they should, in writing, if possible, you should let them know that if they are in charge, they are the ones who will be taking such decisions, so that they should not ask you for another employee now who does the same thing, which can fair to them. Because if this one is not done and reprimanded, then the problem will be that the other one that wants to reprimand now will ask, what did I do that is wrong that the other person did not do, and they did worse than me. Yeah, I get that now very well. But if what you said earlier that you follow the steps, then your part is done. Because most important is whether you're the employee or the manager or the owner, the most important is to take your obligation seriously. Because in the labor spectrum, there has been a major problem because one group of people, and this is mainly employees, they focus on their rights. Another group focus on the obligations. So employers only look at the obligations of employees most of the time. And then most of the time, employees only look at their rights. So when they meet, it's an agitation. Because these two alone don't necessarily meet on the same table and have a good meal. So what should happen is that we should look at it holistically. And when you talk of holistically, you are talking about look at it from what are the rights of each party. Each party has a right. What are the rights? What are the obligations? What are the roles? And what are the responsibilities? So there are four things: responsibilities, roles, rights, and obligations. So if you, in this case, if you are the head, you have finished your obligation. You have also considered the rights of the employee by following the process. You have played your role, and you have taken care of your responsibilities. I think you are good. You are good. So the ball is on the other side of the court, which is the proprietor or the owner of that institution. Do you have anything else? Because I don't want to divert into issues beyond what I wanted to share today. And I'm very grateful that you connected. We have had a fairly good session. And okay, which labor law takes precedence in an international school? The law of the land or the international labor law? Now, internationally, we don't have what we call international labor law, but we have internationally we have what we call the framework that informs the law locally, and this is up to the 193 member states of the UN, who are also bound by what ILO, International Labour Organization, ascribes to, so that the members are supposed to go and effect it. So in ILO, we have those ones that don't bind, but you are told to use them so that you make things better. But also we have those ones that are binding. For example, we have a set of rules that they refer to as conventions. So if you hear ILO conventions, those are binding. Whether you want to take them or not, are binding. But among the ILO conventions, we have 8 of them, which are called core labor standards. And I think I will come at a different session and we discuss these labor standards. So the core labor standards are global, whether you accept them, whether you don't accept them, whether you practice or not, they underpin employment environment, and there are 8 only. But we have over 109 and 8 of these international labor convention or ILO convention. But also we have in ILO, we also have another set of rules that are not necessarily binding, but they they suggest, they help you, they guide countries on what is favorable, what is the best, and what is important. So in this specific case, the local law usually, because you're asking which labor law takes place in an international school. So if an international school has presence in more than one country, number one, they must have standards. So these standards should be internal standards for the school in each and every place they are. That's the first thing. Second thing is that this international institution is supposed to also guide by the laws of the countries where they are. Now, there's usually another thing in policy of labor that where the two are in conflict, where the internal policies of the organization or laws of the organization, which are supposed to be made from an international framework, are in conflict with the local law, then the most stringent, if it's in terms of strictness, is the one that is supposed to be followed. It in terms of favor, the most favorable to the employees is the one that's supposed to be followed. So is either the most stringent, the most strict one, the one that applies, or if it is in terms of the benefits and such that employees are supposed to get, then the most favorable. So the one that takes precedence in an international school is the one that is stricter. That's comparing their own internal policies and the local law. So if the local law is stricter, then they follow the local law. If the internal policy are stricter, then they follow the internal policy. However, if it is in terms of benefits to the employees, then the one that has more benefits to the employees. For example, if the local law says that they provide, let's talk of maternity leave. They are in Kenya, they are in Uganda, they are in South Africa. In Africa, for example, I just pick those three. And then Zimbabwe. And this is a lady who wants to go on maternity leave. Now, maternity leave is a benefit. Now, this organization has prescribed that the maternity leave is 50 days or does not exceed, is 50 days. Let's say the maternity leave is 50 calendar days in the internal policy of this school or organization that is international in nature. Now, if this organization comes to Kenya, maternity leave is given a minimum of 90 days. That is 3 months. So when they come to Kenya, between 90 days and 50 days, then they will go for 90 days. Because the benefit of 90 days is more favorable than the 50 days. If they go to Uganda, I think is 60 days, which is the bare minimum actually of the international convention on maternity. So Uganda uses the minimum 60 days, 60 calendar days. That's the last time I checked. So then they pick the 60 days because again 50 days is not favorable. But and then if they're in South Africa, it is 4.5 months. Then they take the 4.5 months in South Africa because that is the most favorable. And in Zimbabwe, it's 98 days. Then they take the 98 maternity leave days. Now, here is the catch-22. Now that they're in all these places, there's something called best practice. So if they're giving 60 in Uganda, 90 in Kenya, 98 in Zimbabwe, and 4.5 months in South Africa, they can be compelled to have a best practice, which is the best benefit. In this case, 4.5 months that is in South Africa, can now be applying to everywhere they go and where they have the presence. And that is what the negotiators, people who negotiate, and particularly for collective bargaining, if you are doing collective bargaining for a company that has multinational presence, and you are on the worker side, you need to do that research and see what do they give where. Yeah, so that if you are in ABSA that is in Kenya and it's in South Africa, don't request for smaller benefits in Kenya when South Africa has better benefits. Now, if they are headquartered in London, for example, or in New York, and the benefits in New York are better, then you can demand for those benefits in New York because you say that is headquartered. And that's why, like Kenyan companies, for example, that are going regional, you find that East and Central Africa. Now, most of the time, you find that in this region of East and Central Africa, Kenya has better terms or benefits for employees. So if you're working together and if you're working for workers, you share that information with your counterparts in Uganda or in Congo or in Tanzania, and that benefit now is supposed to be going from the country of origin, which is Kenya in this case, to those countries where this company is going. So I hope I've explained that well. I wish I will know the feedback if what I've given as a response is sufficient. But overall, the labor law that takes place is the one that is most stringent, the most strict. That is between the international standard, the internal policy, and the local law. The most stringent is the one that takes place. Or if it's out of benefit, the one that prescribes the best benefits for the employees. Yeah, I think that is well done. The organization, this is another question. I think producer can bring it on board. The organization's policy has it that salary deduction can be used as a disciplinary measure. An action that works perfectly, but which is totally against the law. The staff code of conduct obligates all staff to sign it with the salary deduction as part of it. Can one go to court to claim their deducted salary even if they signed the code of conduct? Yes, I don't know which country is this, but let me talk about one I know the best, which is Kenya. Across, we call it salary, but in local economics it's called wages. Wages are what out of your work, yeah, as an employee or a worker. Now, there is something called elasticity of the wages. Now, both in law and normal circumstances, wages are sticky downwards. That means you cannot stretch them downwards. You cannot negotiate them downwards once you have set the standard, and you should not do so. Number one. Number two, you cannot deduct unlawfully that wage. Now, you cannot use wage as a disciplinary measure. That is out of order in Kenya. Unless there's another law elsewhere in another country that allows us to permit that. But to the best of my knowledge, that is unlawful, and it's not going to court. Ministry of Labor, and you pay, and you can even it can bring trouble, not just your reputation, but also your finances, because you can end up even losing your license to operate, because that is totally out of the law. So signing, you see, the signature means I'm obliged. It does not necessarily mean that I have accepted. And it's because we have what called power relations. Now, employer and employee power relations, one is more powerful, and that's the employer. So if the employer abuses that power, then the law exists to correct it to normality, so that the excesses that employers actually have are taken away from the employer by the law, so that the employer can be on check. Employer can wake up and tell you today you will not come to work, and that is it. That's why when they do that, you can go to court, so that they are given the process to fire you. So in this specific question, disciplinary measure using salary deduction, that is not allowed. It's unprocedural, it's inappropriate, it's not supposed to be the case. And somebody go to court if that has happened and they sign, yes, and they will succeed. The signature does not mean that, because that whoever drafted that is not them. They were not consulted in drafting it. They were not allowed to give their opinion in that drafting. So the obligation of drafting a contract is not in the hands of the employee. That's one. Two, the contract has to meet minimum conditions. The conditions of a contract, therefore, are supposed to be met, and they're in law, and supposed to be done by the employer. So if the contract has illegal aspects, the employer carries the weight of that illegality. Lastly, the code of conduct is also a job of the employer. If employer has put clauses that are oppressive, unlawful, and unreasonable in the code of conduct, then it is them to carry that weight of the illegalities in that code of conduct. So the employer cannot run away from that. Employees can still get their money back. And if you are the manager, you make it clear to the employer that is not lawful, and do it in writing. Do it in writing so that whether they accept or not, at least your part is solved. Because managers sometimes are the most precarious people in organizations. You can't go to the union, you are told so, and you're not the owner, and there are decisions that people will think you have made, but you have made elsewhere, but you are the one to communicate with them as if you are the maker of these decisions. Yeah, so I don't know if there's something else or anybody else. Maybe if you have any comment that somebody has they put earlier or now, and you want us to just appreciate them, what a producer. Oh, Fidelia, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Fidelia. Nelson, we appreciate your presence, and you are such a supportive brother. Thank you so much, Nelson. Thank you, Evangelist. We have really had a good session because of your very great questions that you brought on board. Yeah, so I want us to give you a close in a short time. Producer, is there another thing that we need to look into? And then we bring to a close. Anything else? Okay. Now, this is what I want to say. Please follow me, because today is our inaugural moment when we want to start this, but we'll be doing this more frequent. Let us know what we want to discuss. And we'll be discussing a variety of things. But today we have dedicated on labor, and we'll be doing a lot on labor. Labor means employment-related circumstances. I'll appreciate if you followed me on Twitter. My handle is at AOWere. On Facebook, it will also be good. If you followed me on Facebook, I have a Facebook page which is at Labor Focus. I also have Alphonse Were as my personal profile, or Alphonse Were Wow, as personal profile online. Yeah, you can also find me on LinkedIn as Alphonse Were, and I really appreciate it. So I've seen something from Analyst. He says, so I scored 89% in an annual appraisal in December. In January, I think there's something going on. Either when you write it further so that you get it, or use the link. Oh, Brother Fadili, I'm appreciating your presence. Thank you so much. And the good thing is it's recorded, so you can actually see it. It's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, on different platforms. That is on Facebook, my Facebook page, and the two profiles that I have on Facebook, all are running this, and also on Twitter. So thank you so much, Fadili, and I appreciate your presence. There's an issue here that says, I go back to work and I notice I'm fired with no reason at all. The organization is still okay. The CEO doesn't talk to me. It is the HR who gives me a send-off letter. Okay. So I actually don't know what that's all about. But ideally, you don't need to meet the CEO to give you the letter. So the issue will be that, I don't know how to put it. The issue will be that what you need to do, if there's no reason at all, then you ask for the reason. And you can do that in writing. So when you write, if you're already away, write an email using your personal email to the employer's email. That way, you'll have record that you actually inquired. Okay, now I get that clearly. Now this that makes it complete. So now I can read the whole question. I go back to work and notice I'm fired with no reason at all. The organization is still okay. CEO doesn't talk to me. It is the HR. who gives me a send-off letter. What steps should I follow to get justice? Now, first, the letter must have some content. So we must be asking, what does the letter say? Because the letter will say whether you are terminated, you are dismissed, or there's another way of leaving the company or organization, which is called by a fraction of time. Fraction of time is where you had a contract, a fixed contract that was running for 12 months, for 3 years, and it has elapsed. It has lapsed. As a result, therefore, it is not being renewed. Now, if it's a fraction of time, there's not much you may do apart from asking for your dues. But if any other reason, then we can interrogate it. So the process is get the substance in the letter that we use as the reason for your dismissal or your termination, dismissal, or disengagement. So once we get what is in the letter, the next thing is if it's based on your conduct or behavior or performance and it's not true, then you write an appeal, even if they have not told you to do so because it's your right, contesting the reasons they gave in that letter, not what they told you verbally. But then you have timelines. So that if you do this and in 1 month, in 2 weeks, you're not getting a response, you write a reminder, not another letter, just a reminder. Now, if that reminder is not taken serious after another month, another 2 weeks, means a full month, you make a reminder that within a week now you can take an action. If it's in Kenya, for example, the action can be you go to the Ministry of Labor and launch a grievance. They will summon you and the employer, and the matter will be sorted there. If it's not closed, they will give you a certificate. That certificate will be whether you have how do you agree, and then you can agree that you disagreed, or you agree that you agreed. So if you agree that you disagreed, then you can now go to court. Now, when you go to, you can go to court. Also, you can directly go to court. You can take a lawyer, or just you can do it yourself because employment you can actually even represent yourself. You can take a lawyer and go to court and file a court case, or do it yourself. Just depend on what to do, how to draft it. If you understand the process and you do it, the next will be you take an advocate of the High Court so that you are able to do that. Because lack of response is a response. So don't say that I was given a response. The silence means a response, only that is not the one you want. I hope I make sense on that one. Yeah, so justice might take a while. In Kenya, you can launch that in court within 36 months from the date you are terminated. Within 36 months. But the sooner you speak, the better. Don't wait for long. Yeah, but other countries might have differences in that. But every country has a law that governs employment issues. Like the one I was studying is for Zimbabwe, it's called the Labor Act. Yeah, so these acts of parliament exist, and they handle different things. They handle different things around us. And there are several. We will be dealing with labor laws at the stage, but just understand the environment. And I'll have a bias in Kenya, but I will creatively and purposely decide to focus on the international standards. That wherever you are and which comes and viewing us from, be able to pick a point or two. Yeah. So thank you so much. I request that you follow my page on Facebook. You like the page. You also like my YouTube channel and follow me on Twitter so that we are able to engage further and further. And I'm very, very grateful. Thank you so much. If there's nothing else, producer, maybe you can give us go ahead to close because I've not seen anything else. So thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. For sure, for sure. What we'll do, my brother, is put the questions down. I will share the link with you next time you are going live so that you can actually come and ask them one at a time. Probably, maybe not even in writing, so that we record as you say them. It's still okay. You can still write them, but you can also join through a link and you'll be able to ask the questions. We'll share with you specifically because you have shown that you have issues that need to be raised and they are very pertinent. And people should not give up. Workers should not give up. Do your part, do it so well. But on the other side, employers should also not give up. Do your part, do it so well. So thank you so much, my brothers and sisters, for having me on your screens. I must appreciate those who are live and those who have liked us. Thank you, Simba Bindik, Kuchio Fadili, Cyprian Ogola. Long time, man. I'm very grateful. My brother Festus Nzuke, I can see you. Doreen, thank you so much. Ismail, I'm happy to see you. Sister Lucia, I'm grateful that you tuned in and you also liked us. We are very, very grateful. I may not mention all of you, but Leonard Kondomwanza, I'm grateful that you tuned in. This was such an honor to have all of you, and we had others that I acknowledged earlier, and I'm just grateful. I'm moved. Fidelia Mwangangi, my sister, Nelson, Mary, I'm very, very grateful for all of you to have joined us today, and we are going to be live again. We're going to join again. We're going to be with you again. So thank you so much. And I wish you a blessed night. God bless you so much. Have a good night.